Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for joining us today for the session on EnterpriseOne data analysis in the real world. My name is Mike Guerin, and I will be your lead host for the session today. So, in terms of agendas for today, can I have some quick introductions for myself and my wingman for today, Terry Clark. We'll look at what exactly it is that we're talking about. What is a data analysis and why would you want to do one? When you're doing a data analysis with your J.D. Edwards tables, what is it that you're looking for? What does it mean? By what does it mean? We're saying, what will you do with that information? If you're looking at transactional information or master tables or Z tables, what does the information that you have mean and how can you work with it to the betterment of your organization? We'll cover off 4 real-world samples from ones that we've done over the years that we think have some intriguing and interesting information for you. And then we will, the latter part, talk about things that we are aware of that can help out. And we'll finish up with some Q&A. So in terms of housekeeping, if you're familiar with GoToWebinar, if you've been on sessions before, on the right-hand side of your screen, there's boxes where you can submit questions. Feel free to submit them as we go along. We will stop several times during the course of the presentation, and Terry will queue up the questions, and Terry or myself will respond to them. We are recording the session today, so if you want to go back and review it again at your leisure, or if there's others that you do that were interested but didn't have the time to be able to attend today, happy to share that so they can look at it as well. We got a couple of quick questions on an exit survey, so if you have the time when you exit out, can help us out, that would be great. In terms of introductions, my name is Mike Guerin. I'm a senior advisor here at ISP3. Been in J.D. Edwards since 1982, so a little over 30 years. I've been involved with data cleanup projects for the last 20 years with a couple of different tools with a number of different customers. And that last 20 years corresponds with my time frame with Team Kane, and now after Team Kane's acquisition by ISP3, directly with ISP3. So, Terry, my friend, how about yourself?
Hi, Mike. Thanks very much. Yes, Terry Clark. I'm the Managing Director at Click IT. 24 years in J.D. Edwards, not quite as long as Mike. As you can see from the picture, so I'm a few years younger. However, that picture is a few years old, so I don't quite look like that anymore. Bit more grey hair. Over the last, I suppose, 15 years, I've been working a lot in the environment and data management area. I've been instrumental in the product management at Click IT, and primarily that's mostly been around our Purge-it archiving products. So for me, environment management, data management projects, real-life projects in that area is something that I've got a lot of experience in. And which is why I'm on the call here with Mike on the session, just to provide him with support of the experiences I've had, along with the experiences he's had in environment and data management for customers of many long years of J.D. Edwards.
Great, thanks, Terry. Terry and I have had a number of intriguing chats over the years about intriguing things and situations that we've encountered at clients. So, just speaking of a lot of something for fun facts. The Great Lakes is the world's largest freshwater supply system in the world. That's about 18% of the world's supply of fresh water. If you spread that out across North America, it would cover the entire continent in about 3.5 feet of water. Anecdotally, that's kind of like some 9/11 tables that we've seen as we've done our data analysis out there. So maybe not 3.5 feet, but getting up there. So what's a data analysis? Why would you want to do one? Data analysis is looking at your J.D. Edwards and related tables. So the records, the size, looking at that by module, looking at that by type. The reason you're doing this is so that you get to understand what it is that you have, and in oftentimes hidden details about it, and what it means to your business. Because your file system, whatever it is, master, transaction, control tables, things pile up in there over time, particularly with J.D. Edwards. As you know, J.D. Edwards is a batch system, data-driven, so an awful lot of stuff builds up over the years. Your performance is partially based upon the size of the tables and what it has to chew through. Mainly transactions, but certainly master tables that are out there and some of the hidden ones you might not think about as well. If you're hosted, or if you're in the cloud these days, or if you're thinking of going to the cloud, you're paying for everything. So you're paying for storage, you're paying for processing, you're paying for ins and outs. So what's all your usage for that? Do you need it all, or do you have some redundancy and some things that really don't make sense to have? If you're going to be going to the cloud, great to get this taken care of before you do your migration. Planning and upgrading. Most organizations these days have gotten to the latest release and are more on the it's continuous upgrade path rather than the hard process for upgrading. Even so, there's testing, there's things that you need to go through. And if you haven't done some kind of a review and cleanup of what you got out there, there's other, what we call nuggets with air quotes, really problems that you can clear out first. Everybody does testing. Everybody's got training or dev system. If you're doing environmental replication, if you got way more than you need, not only is it your 3 terabytes, it's 3 terabytes times 5. So it adds up a lot. It also complicates the process of doing testing because you don't do as much because of the problems involved. So your business changed over the years. One of the things I know from my side that has been the most clear doing the data analysis is how much it uncovers skeletons in the closet from data divestitures or company divestitures, changes in business processes, organizations that were running payroll that are not anymore, changes in how they did work orders. So transactional, but also a lot of master control tables and other ones that really don't represent where the business is at anymore. So when you're doing the analysis, what is it that you're looking for? We tend to think of this really in 5 main groups. So the obvious one is your transactional information. Your 911 for GL, 42199 for sales history transactions, 3102, 4111, 618 for payroll. So the more you have in those, more backup time, data replication, disaster recovery, but it's kind of obvious. Even so, having said that, it's amazing how big some of these are when we talk to customers. Your master tables, these are kind of the new ones. They're the nasty surprise hiding behind the curtain there. Chart of accounts, address book, item master, item branch, employee master, stuff that you don't need anymore. You've just never taken the time to go and look at. It makes life difficult for your users. There is a performance hit for most products and most runs that need to go through these tables. So the reason they're the kind of the new ones is it's complicated. It's not as simple as saying, oh, we're going to clear out the 911. There's a lot more you need to look at. If you got too much data in your balance tables, mainly the 902 for GL and the 41021 for inventory, 1202 for fixed assets as well. These are what drive most reports and processes in those areas. The more you got, the slower it's going to take. The more complicated it is for users going in and look at stuff, the more complicated it is for processes that run against them. Custom tables, you're going to see as we go through some of our samples, there's a lot of data in custom tables out there. It's frankly almost shocking when we're working with most customers. The process has been set up to write information to them, but thought is never really given to maybe getting the data out of there at some point. And then all the other hidden little gems like the FO 911 copy that you made back in 2009 in September for some testing, and the 4801 work order master you did a copy of prior to your partial upgrade. Z tables you got out there, the 165 backup before you went live and did your conversion. Mike's copy of the 4211 for some quick testing. It's amazing how much ends up gathered up out there. So I thought it might be interesting to show you what I consider to be the winners in terms of the tables that we've seen from our analysis. So in red are my personal favorites, so that's kind of like the Academy Award winners. But kind of in no particular order, a 911 GL transaction table with over 1 billion records and taking up 3.7 terabytes. You will see in there, Lazy Boy mentioned a couple of times, we're largely referencing transaction or information that they've got in their archive. They did a presentation at InFocus on their data cleanup experience and a system down, in essence, issue that they ran into and how they recovered from it. Real interesting viewing if you can get to that through Quest. Cardex, so inventory transactions over 1 billion and over 2 terabytes. 72 million account master 901 records, over 250 million 902 records, 155 million item locations. I wouldn't want to do cycle counting there. 57 million asset master records. AR notifications over 200 million. So these are real world examples, and a number of them are well beyond several hundred gigabytes, and a number of them are into the terabytes of data. That's too much, really. So when you're looking at this type of information, one of the starting points for determining what to do is your retention policies. So, and the starting point for most customers when we're talking to them is, hey, paper-wise, we need to keep 7 years worth of data. So at the get-go, that's going to be what we're going to do for transactional information as well. Cool, that's fine, stake in the ground. Couple of things from that, as shows down at the bottom left, that doesn't mean that Al has to be in production. So with our surveys of customers, current +2 through current +4 is the most common for people that have enacted a process to move production data out of production, and the rest of it is kept in archive. So down near the bottom, there's a difference between the legal requirement and the operational. Operational is what you need to keep in production to support your operation of the business. Selling goods, receiving goods, doing jobs, manufacturing items, paying bills, receiving payments, paying employees. That doesn't have to be your full legal requirement. Anything beyond that realistically can and should go away. The extension to this as well is with the right solution, you can tune this so that if you need to keep a bit more maybe for sales purposes, for track and trace, cool, do so. If you want to keep only current +1 in production and 2 years in archive for GL or for AR and AP and for core GL, go ahead and do that. You can do it. This should be your starting point, because the majority of the information is going to be transactions in the core JD tables and spin-off or related ones in custom. So what do you do with the information then? First grouping, the transaction tables. As mentioned, look at it from a data retention perspective. Carve out the data based upon that, either at a high level and or down to the module or subsystem level. If you want to have concern for your nervous users who are saying they don't want to get rid of anything, cool, we see that all the time. The stuff that you're going to get rid of, put it into a separate library called ArcDel. So don't get rid of it, don't purge it, keep it there for a year or so, see if anybody asks for it. Odds are they probably won't. Look at your largest ones first. So deal with the biggest, the ones that have the most impact, be it transactional or later on master as well. Because you're running JD Edwards, there's a lot of relationships between tables and JDE. You could have a work order or a couple of work orders that are tied to a purchase order, which is generated to satisfy a line on a sales order, which could have been created from a blanket order, all of which are giving rise to inventory transactions and commitments, which are giving rise to AP vouchers and checks, and to AR or customer invoices and payments, all of which is ending up in the GL. There are dates, there are statuses, there are batch implications for some of these that you need to respect if you want to maintain the integrity in your system. Ones that support your balance tables as well, so the 911 to the FO902, also really to the 1202 for fixed assets, and the item master to the item balance table, or the item transaction to the item balance table. You have to maintain the sync between those as well. Touch on that a bit later. For some of the modules like receivables and payables, they function in a batch basis, not on a document by document basis. If you're working with those, you have to pay attention to that, and even more so if you've got mixed company records in the tables, like in the 411. When we're working with customers on this, our recommendation is normally, notwithstanding the largest ones first, but if you work from the edge of the data universe, from the farther reaches of the solar system inbound, so like the work orders, much like shown in point 3 here, you will get the maximum that you can remove from a transactional side. What about master tables? We get asked about this an awful lot when we're working with customers. The first thing is clear your transactions. You need to get rid of them before you can get rid of any master tables where you could have excess records. When you're looking at that, what are the ones that need the most attention? Where does it seem like your heartache is? Do you have 32 million chart of accounts? Do you have 17 million fixed asset records? Are you way over the top on your work orders? From knowledge of your business, where it's gone, where it is now, which ones are likely to have some obsolete data? Did you shut down a line of business a while back? Did you outsource payroll and therefore can look at that a bit more seriously? Users talking about anything, taking forever to search through assets. Chart of accounts is just like way out of control. Way too many vendors for it to make sense for you. Look at long or slow running jobs. Look through your help desk calls if you've got a system and see where users are complaining. You start by identifying how you're going to figure out which records to be cleared. So by this, I mean, look at ways that in address book, for example, what can you use to peg to identify an address book record that says, yeah, this is one I want to theoretically get rid of. It could be a category code that you're using. You could fine tune it to vendor types for payables or customers and check and see whether you've got anything in the 401 and the 03012 as well. For financial related ones, chart of accounts, business units, companies, more often than not, it's a company or a business unit or a range of them that has caught your attention that you want to be able to get rid of. And because they're key fields, it's going to make the process a lot simpler. Item master, item branch, a lot of the times, again, that's based upon the branch plan or product line or something that you likely already have identified, so you can use that. Don't overlook the secondary ones as well, like item cost, components, bill of materials, etc. So the point here is looking at the master tables, understanding from a business and a user perspective where there are opportunities, and then figuring out ways that you can tag them so that they can be used in subsequent steps to be able to be tested and removed. What's interesting in going through this is there's a lot more instances of the main fields than you'd really think. When you consider address book, you normally think of ANA, which is, yeah, you're right, that's the perfect starting point. There's actually 144 aliases and 1,500 tables, excluding the subledgers. For business unit, there's 90 individual aliases and over just under 1,600 tables. For accounts, 38 aliases and 283 tables. So there's a lot of ANAs or equivalents and a lot of MC user equivalents that are out there. Search type kind of thing can help out some of the other fields as well. There tends to be, generally across the board, a primary master table, like the FO101, that will have some subordinate or related tables. So the 111, 401, 06116, you can't have records in those without the FO101 first. So you know the starting point and you know what you can chain out to from there. And there's a bunch of others, including things like tenant lease master if you're running that. And a lot of these also show up, address numbers, business units in the business unit and in the company type table. So start from the outside as mentioned. Once you've removed them, look for remaining transactions in the table. So you've got rid of the main ones you think. Do the cross-check and see if what you're looking to get rid of shows up anymore in the tables. I.e. check the account ID in the appropriate ones for the ones that you're looking to remove from the 901. Then go to your control tables, then to secondary and your other main master tables. As with anything else, if you start with the larger or main or key ones first, you can do those and take the others at your leisure. So if you're clearing out the transactions and then you've gotten most of the records related to the business units and the other tables, you know you've got 15, 20, 30 tables that are left over. As long as they're not critical ones that can confuse the users, that's fine. You've got 17 years of data in the system. You took 17 years to get it in there. If it takes you 6 months to remove portions of it, that's fine. Use your data analysis to help determine which tables have records. So narrow down the search so you don't have to look at all 1,500. We have tools that can help for that. Don't remove records if you still have information remaining in the transactional tables. If you're looking to remove a business unit and it's still showing up in your sales ledger, why? What did you miss when you were doing the analysis and pulling the information? Integrity reports before and after, and we find very much SQL summaries before and after will help out a lot as well. So, and obviously you're doing all of this in PY and DV first. So what about balance tables? The main ones you got out there, as mentioned before, is your 902, account balances by year, account ledger type, subledger. Your 41021 for your item balance by item, branch plan, location, lot and serial number if you're using them. There's an item as of as well, the 41112. People actually sometimes forget that they've got that from what we've seen. And also your 1202 for asset balances. Because your balances are supported by the transactions that build them up, if you're removing the transactions that are building them up, so you're looking to clear out your own direct transaction information, you need to leave something behind that will keep that balance in place. So in the 911, you likely have fiscal years and periods, ledger types, possibly subledgers for each of the accounts. So if you're summarizing or you're removing $5,000 worth of transactions in period 2 from 11 years ago, you need to make sure you've got a placeholder of $5,000 to hold that. So you can build that up. That's how you're going to keep your 902 in balance. Similarly, on the 41021, the item balance, the same kind of concept. For both of those, you want to summarize up. So did you have, for example, subledger records at the 902 that you really don't need for older years because it's older stuff and you're taking up an awful lot of space with the 902s. For the 41021 as well, old lots or serial numbers, if you don't need them for track or trace, you need to keep them. So there are some business decisions and thoughts that can go into it. We've seen as well, looking at ledger types in the 902, there's old or defunct ones or ones that really aren't needed anymore. Ledger type is part of the key in the 902. Take a look at what you've got out there, see if you can reduce the size that way. If you're going to be surgically removing some of the information because of business changes, i.e. companies that are no longer in existence, again, follow the proper path. Take the transactions out first, make sure you don't have any that are remaining in there, and then carry on from there. Make sure you're running your integrity reports before and after, and watch your intercompany accounts as well. It's entirely possible that you might need to do some replacement cross-balancing entries to keep things in sync. Your auditors will probably want to take a look at that. And then, of course, always integrity reports and SQL summaries before and after. The SQL summaries we find are really helpful for letting you see what you expect to have happen and the summary of the records when you finish to see how it compares to your expectations and whether you missed anything. So what about hidden tables? What would you consider to be a hidden table? Well, from our perspective, we see this most often as manual backup. So the last line on the slide a couple of months back, the 4211 mic. So things that you made a copy of for very valid reasons at the time, but that reason doesn't exist anymore. That's the majority of it. We also see things like system tables where tracking or something has been turned on and forgotten about. A couple of weeks ago, I saw a 98912 business function usage tracking table with about 400 million records in it. I understand tracking that information. Do you need that much? Does it need to go back that far? Is it something even that was turned on at one point and somebody forgot to just turn it off? So a lot of these, there are processes that can clean it out within JD Edwards. The trick is knowing about them first. Z tables. This is really interesting when we're looking at this. They're transitional transactional tables, but they get forgotten about sometimes. Most of them have the ability to clear themselves out as they're processed, or they have Z table purges that you can run. People forget about it. So the largest we've seen is a work order parts list Z table with over 1 billion records. Yes, that's a fact. Across all of the analyses that we've done, summarization when we went in, the point in time when we did them, we've seen over 9 billion Z table records and over 13 billion records in manual backups. So that's a fair amount of pretty pointless data kind of hanging out there with scotches and cigars. So, custom tables. Well over 90% from our survey and work of customers have custom tables. Some a small amount, some pretty enormous. These are your F55 to F59 tables, so the system reserved codes for JD Edwards. Many of these can just be cleared because they're tied to the main JD Edwards table. So you've got a 554211 capturing additional information for your 4211. Well, if you're clearing out your 4211 or your 42119, you can clear out the related table at the same time. To do this for any of the tables, you need to understand the relationship between your custom table and the driver or master table in JD Edwards, if one exists. You might have done some pure play custom stuff. Is it tied to the 42119? Is it tied to the 911? Is it tied to your asset master? Is it tied to work orders? If you look at the primary keys and you understand JD Edwards, the primary keys for the custom table, you'll get a pretty good idea as to what it's likely tied to. If you're following proper naming conventions, and sadly, we've seen that the case maybe half the time, you'll have a pretty good idea what it ties to. Ideally, when you created these custom tables and your programs to update it, you have specs, you have design documents. You should be able to refer back to them and find out the purpose if nobody knows, find out the usage and find out the table specs and what it ties to. If it's a full custom module, you should have, a bolt-on that you've acquired for working with JD Edwards. You should have table specs in there to be able to look and compare. So the real point here is you need to understand where the custom tables are used, what they're for, what they tie to, and use that to drive the cleanup. The reason we've often seen customers hold off on this is not wanting to take the time to go and look at that information. You really need to do it at some point. Why wait? With these as well, and we'll see this pretty clearly from the examples, work on the size and scale first. So if your top 10 out of 450 custom tables represent 75% of your data, that's a pretty nice win for looking at 10 tables. To get through all of it might take a few passes, but if you've got 17 years of data in there, again, it's not going to take you 17 years to get it out. You'll remove it a lot quicker than you put it in there. So remarkably, across all the analysis that we did, again, 53 billion records in custom tables and over 5 billion records in EDI tables. And EDI are categorically meant to be transitory. Have them inbound or outbound, create the appropriate records with your trading partners, and then you should be done. Well, coincidentally, we've seen over 60 with over 100 million records in it, just in the custom tables. So that's a lot. In terms of cleanup attempts, what have we seen? Because we're often coming in after the fact and people have tried some stuff and they're not happy with the results. So, it's like your air conditioner is not working. So let's take the window air conditioner and strap a generator onto the top of the car. That'll keep the car cool. I don't know if it's the best approach though. Most often we've seen is using SQL or DFU, direct updates to take the information out. So your card X has gotten out of control. So you just made the decision to go out and say anything more than 10 years old, we're just going to get rid of it. Okay, I get it. You did that, but it doesn't exist on its own. There are 911 transactions. There's transactions related to it in purchasing, in sales, in work orders. Unless you took the time to work those relationships, you didn't clean those out, so you've only done a partial job, and you got some dregs, coffee grounds left behind in the other ones, not helping yourself out. The JD Purge routines that are out there, some of them are great, some of them we recommend to customers because they're fit to task. Anything when you're looking at information related to master or transactional tables, they are typically just going into a spot, and they're not a hell of a lot better other than the fact that you didn't have to write it than the SQL or DFU updates. Some assembly required. There are solutions out there that will allow you to remove information from JD Edwards. they tend to be a bucket of blocks. They're like Lego or Mega blocks. So you need to build up the routines, build up the relationships. Maybe not 100%, but a fair part. And rarely are you covering off all of the cross-date checking and all of the modules. So there are validations that are likely missed, and there are subtleties in there that they likely don't have. The other problem with it is they're foreign to JD Edwards, so it's a totally different tool you're using. You also have, because it's outside of JD Edwards, I've got a customer I'm talking to right now who are looking to do an update to their database software next year, and the tool that they are using will not support that. So they're looking for an alternate right now. The other biggest thing with the other non-specific tools is you're working in JD Edwards. Unless it's working in JD Edwards, it's difficult to work with. So some general ideas, SQL analysis and summaries. Carrie, probably the same with yourself, but I do this all the time when I'm working with customers. So you're looking at the 9/11 and what to do. Summarize your 9/11 by year and company so you know what's likely available. Companies will often do it by company, but that'll give you like the temporal distribution. You're looking at it by company and some other chosen criteria, possibly business unit, if you're looking to remove records for it, for business units that have been shut down. Same sorts of things, cross-checking in your tables if you're looking to remove master data. So the item from the item master, where do we see that showing up? Summarize, excuse me, the data by year or something from the other tables. So keeping in mind, again, business unit is potentially 1,500 tables, and account ID is possibly in 250. So what's the criteria that you use? Grab a UDC or reserved field. When you're doing the summaries or when you're creating the routines or using pre-built routines to get the information or remove the information, you want to use an existing efficient index, and if one doesn't exist, create one. You're not too worried if your table has 100, 1,000, 5,000, maybe even 50,000 records. When you get into the million plus, if the field that you are using is not in the first, ideally, worst case, second position of an existing index, you want to create one. You don't want to continue to do sequential reads through a table with 1 million, 10 million, 100 million, 1 billion records. We've had success as well with parking the data that you want to validate somewhere else. So if I want to remove a bunch of business units, rather than constantly referring to and doing lookups for ranges in the 0006, I'll extract the records I want from the 0006, put it in a 0006 somewhere else, and refer back to that table somewhere else and just say, do an existence check. If it's there, it's one I want to get rid of. If you're looking at things like master tables and trying to figure out where else it might be used, as part of our data analysis, we've got an Excel document that has every occurrence for account, fixed asset number, business unit, company, and address book, where they are, their related aliases, that we can also tie to a table analysis. We are working on the item master as well as we speak. So, other helpful summaries, 4111, Cardex is typically a big one, by the date and the doc type to see what's out there. Keep in mind for that, similarly for the second one shown down here, for the sales tables, related for the purchasing ones, to do that, to get a bit of a sense for the business, maybe the ordering business unit, the selling business unit, doing it by the dates. Dates are, you don't have fiscal years or periods in these tables. You need to pull the information out and then do pivot tables on top of it. Not a big deal. We do this all the time, but it's an additional step that you need to do. If you're looking to clear out the account master, do it by company, possibly by the business unit, related to that into the other tables. Same thing for the 41021 for something like the branch plan. If you know that you've got some defunct business units, start off with the main tables for the MCU and related, and see how many you've got and how far back. If you can, try and tag them as well. So if you've got 132 business units, tag them. Use the tag to keep them so that you don't have to stretch yourself with 472 separate cross-references. So, Terry, I'm about to transition now to the the summary analyses and some of the samples that we've done. So I just wanted to see if we've had any questions flowed in to this point.
Hi, Mike. Yeah, no, that was very interesting. A lot of the points you raised there resonated with what I see when I do projects as well, especially the process flow that you go through to try to analyze what's going on. So that was really interesting. I've got just a couple. I don't know if you want to just look at these at the moment. Early on in the presentation, you mentioned the F911, and one of the attendees said that their main problem they think is just the F0911, the general ledger. Wants to know whether they can. I mean, obviously there's a data analysis. That's not part of the question, but there's a data analysis involved, which is what we were talking about. But they're asking, can we just address the data issues related to GL and the F0911 on its own? Effectively, that's the question. And
okay. Terry, I know Terry, your thoughts are, but mine for that would be, you could, but if you're going to look at just the 911, you really should just look at the general ledger-based ones in there. Without getting into problems with integrity, if you want to go after the 911 and it's kind of the reverse of just going after the 4111. If you want to clear out your 911, you want to clear out the 911 with respect to the related transactions as well. So if you can clear out the 911 just for the GL stuff, the J-type batches and all that, cool. Wouldn't recommend it personally other than that. Would you tend to agree, Terry?
Yeah, that's pretty much exactly what I was just about to say, actually. If you mentioned it before about the fundamental relationships within JD Edwards and the approach that you take to working your way through them, and you mentioned starting from the outside, and if you think about JD Edwards as a process flow of data, whether it's sales order entry through, whether it's order to pay or purchase to pay or order to cash or inventory, they always start at one end. Like if you take sales orders, there's transactions in the general ledger that then relate to sales, inventory, AR, and then GL. So effectively, the general ledger is the end of the process flow. And in looking just at general ledger, you really need to be looking at the systems that put the data into the general ledger in the first place. And so if you don't look at things like sales and AR, then you shouldn't really be also purging things in GL related to sales and AR, because it would create an integrity issue, which really then just leaves sort of G-type transactions in GL, which you could do on their own because they have no relationships with anything else. But typically then you're probably only hitting a fraction of your GL. So whilst it might look like your problem is just in GL, that's where the problem has ended up. The problem starts with data and other systems that need to be cleared out first.
Perfect, yep. Other questions?
Let's see, just looking at this now. There's another one on here to do with transactional tables, because you mentioned transactional tables and master tables, and it's basically, can I stop at transactional tables, or do I have to do master tables as well? It's a tougher business buy-in. This person feels with trying to do master tables because of the perception around them, I guess. That's my interpretation of it. Tougher business buy-in. So can they just do transactional tables, or do you think that they really should be going across the board?
No, it's funny, Terry. You've probably seen the same. We find it sometimes tough enough to get business buy-in at the transactional level, never mind getting down to the master tables. The main point that in bringing up the master tables is they tend to be forgotten ones that could have a big impact. But no matter what, you're going to start with the transactional tables anyway. You have to. And you certainly do not have to do the master tables. I'd say the projects that I've been involved with, about 85%, 80% have been strictly transactional. And the others have had some component of master tables. Conversely, I've had a couple of projects that were just for the master tables because the customer master just got, for various and sundry reasons, got way out of control. So no, you can absolutely do transactional tables on their own. and you don't have to do master tables, I'd strongly counsel, if you're doing the transactional, also look at the ones, the hidden ones like we were talking about, like the custom tables and possibly the Z tables that can be tied to them.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. There are a couple of projects that we've done where they've been specifically targeted at master tables because of a business change, i.e. the company has divested part of its business, so therefore they wanted to effectively shed a company. So it becomes much more complicated to do that because of the way that, as you saw in Mike's presentation, the number of different versions of an address book there are in different, and the number of occurrences that are that then exist within different tables, so much more complicated. And the transactional data is a lot more well researched because that's where most people want to hit. So the routines for doing them are more well defined and typically follow the same sort of process flows. So we see a lot of transactional stuff, not quite so much on the master table side, but that said, for various reasons, whether it's for compliance with data retention, like data protection, people might want to remove old data for protecting sensitive individual data. So sometimes that's the case for master data, but typically most people start with the transactional data. Some move on to the master, but a lot stop at the end of the transactional because they see the performance improvements that they're looking for.
Yeah, absolutely. Great, thanks.
Okay.
Other ones, or?
Well, that's it for the moment, I think.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Jerry. Thanks for the input as well.
No, that's fine.
So we've been talking about, the data analysis that we've done. So, between Terry and I as representatives, we've got like 60 years of J.D. Edwards experience. The companies combined and the consultants, the same sort of thing. So it's based upon our knowledge of the J.D. Edwards tables. We've done over 330 of these analyses for customers over the years. So we look at the information by J.D. module, receivables, payables, purchasing, sales order, CRM, and the type of table like we've been talking about here. We get the details from the customers, and we turn that into summaries by this rather marvelous big Excel spreadsheet and analytical tool that we've got that then summarizes by record counts and sizes, by modules, by type of tables and all that. And then pivot tables summarizes up into a couple of different views. So part of that is saying, hey, transactional data from core modules that with our tool, Purge-it, we can do standard, out of the box, full integrity and all that. Yeah, we'll show you what that works out to. Data from other stuff that we can clear out with what we call our custom module. It's going to be shown as well. We'll also break it down and show you what's in your system tables, what's in your master and balance tables and all. So we can also extend this into a temporal analysis in a couple of different ways. So that's actually looking at a by-year breakdown of the information that's out there. As mentioned, if you are to the point where you want to look at, because of divestitures, like Terry mentioned, company, business unit, accounts, fixed assets, address book, we have extended worksheets that can help out with identifying where you should be looking for that. So I'm going to step through 4 real-world data analyses that we have done that I thought were highlighted some intriguing things. So the first one, it's not a big customer. There's only 225 million records that are out there. In J.D. Edwards terms, that's kind of small, and under 400 gigabytes of data. So when we did this analysis, the first thing that kind of jumped out was, well, this is kind of cool because 2/3 of the total records and over 70% of the data space was eligible to archive. But that we mean the transactions were within standard J.D. Edwards ones that we could automatically handle with the Purge-it modules, or were in custom tables, which we could handle in the same way. What we found interesting with this one was, so there's 54,902, so GL account balance records, but only 101,911 records. That's a really high ratio. So, and 85% of that master and balance table information that you see there was just from the 902 and the 911. So that's high. because there's subledger balances. You know, when we're looking at this, we're thinking there's stuff out there that they still need for older history. Did they maybe do a purge of the 911 already, but left the 902s out there? Again, from looking at it from the financials side, their main business, only just over 200,000 account master records. Very low compared to what we saw in the 902. When we turned our attention to the AR, which really wasn't that big, they had just under 700,000 records in their 3B11. They had more than that in their AR notification history, and in their 3B16 AR stats history, they had 40% of their space and 60% of their records. So again, is this going to bring the system to their knees? No. But that and some other things that we discovered, and looking at the relationship between 901, 911, 902, categorically pointed out some things where, well, okay, we need to look into what's going on here, look into our processes for generating some of this history and using some of it, and seeing whether we're doing a proper job. As a total aside, what we see a lot when we're going through this is the manifestation and result of decisions that were made at an initial go live that nobody ever went back and checked again. So the consultant or the business leader said, we shall do it this way. And nobody's ever gone back to see whether that still makes sense. Second data analysis, bigger customer, 1.6 terabytes, just under 1 billion records. Blue at the top, so the color coding is consistent from analysis to analysis. Manual backups, 0.5 terabyte, 30% of the space. So this is literally like the F4211 mic stuff. So you don't need a tool for that. Just get rid of it. So that was a quick win. They had the second largest group was custom module tables. So they never touched them. So between the two of them, that was about 60% of their data. It's unusual for us to see that much. You put on top of it what we could clear out with the standard modules, normal transaction tables in JDE, we're up to over 80% of the total size. So the master tables, 33 million records, 34 million, considering that's across all systems. Now, it's a fair bit. We wanted to look at some of those, but not as bad as some we've seen. The other interesting thing with this was the top 25 sized tables, so the 25 largest, 10 of them were custom modules. For what it's worth, people that are heavy users of it, that's not uncommon. So again, the hidden stuff, there's a lot that hangs out there. Third analysis, so just under 1 terabyte and a little over 800 million records. This is a pretty standard kind of type 1. 9% of the tables were JD transaction standard ones, accounting for about half of the disk space. About normal. 400 million 902 records, but under 50,000 account masters. What's going on here again? Could it be job master? Probably not. You'd likely have more 901 records. Something to definitely look into. When you're looking at the 902 taking up 40% of your disk space and combined with the 911 taking up 70%, kind of what's going on there. Could be an awful lot of subledgers that maybe aren't needed anymore. So there are also a number of tables that were out there that could have been cleaned up with standard JD routines, like the FO1131M and T tables. They had been running some of the standard purge routines available for some of the tables out in JD Edwards. They'd been running them, but the stuff was still sitting out there. So 20 million records in the production cost archive one. The analysis here definitely highlighted areas around the data, master to balance changes, clearing out old information, and staying on top of some of the balance tables, and looking at ways that things have changed over the years, and the data management should have changed with it. Fourth one, another interesting one. This is a larger organization, so running payroll, and as a result of that, 2 billion records in payroll, 1.5 terabytes of space. GL, 30% of the total. So 7 of the 15 largest were custom ones. Of those, 80% of, just under 1 billion records 86% of it just in the top 20 tables. Interesting one with this one, we're showing the file size versus logical, because logicals take up an awful lot of space on their own. From the fixed asset side, they only had 50,000 assets, but they had over 3 million asset balance records. That's a lot. So the same sort of thing, a clear focus on payroll, and you need all of the stuff that's out there. Clear focus on the 902. What have you got out there? How much do you need? Is it all supported? What's your process? Are you posting in detail when you should be posting in summary? What's going on with fixed assets as well? And while we got a lot of some of these master tables, let's take a look at them. The main thing with each of these is that the care and feeding of the system, and this is a quote from Justin Ellis from his recent presentation at the Virtual in Focus. Care and feeding stuff, which is really data management, transactional master, takes less priority over adding customer value until they bite you. And the biting could be a very slow process of just degradation of performance, things taking too long, users getting a little surly. So tail end here, so what can help? Well, the data analysis that we talked about here is something that we do all the time. It's a really quick process. I sent one off to a customer yesterday. Took them all of about 6 minutes to run and get the information back to me. We go through, we run through our summarization. We then go and look at the details, look at the results, and go back to you and say, hey, this is what we've seen. This is what it means. End result for this, what we're looking for is seeing how we can help you out. And we're hoping how we can help you out might be, hey, take a look at the Purge-it solution we have. It's purpose-built in JD Edwards to take transactions out of the 8 main modules in JD Edwards. It's got hard-coded built-in referential integrity, as well as soft coding and processing options that let you make business determinations. Do you want to maintain as a file? Do you use RMAs? Do you use job cost? How much do you want to validate for your jobs? So all processing options. It runs as a module in JD Edwards. It's got proof and final modes. You can reverse any of the run, or for some of the modules that are not batch-based, any individual transaction that you need to get it back. It's got a full audit trail of everything that it did. And if there's reasons something could not be moved out of the production tables, it tells you why with full details. It's dashboard driven, so they're power forms right within JD Edwards. Custom module lets you get to anything that we don't get to with the normal module. So master tables, Z tables, both of which have starter ones built in, your true custom tables, and it's got some pretty slick and sophisticated capabilities like referential joins, in, not in, like, not like, range, equal, and other logic. There's another subscription solution we have called Manage-it. It's got 4 main components. I'm going to touch on 3 of them here. So Manage-it itself monitors and presents the data that you got out there by environment, by module, by submodule, and by table. By module, I mean financials. Submodule would be GL, AR, AP, and table would be the individual tables. It tracks the records and database size, can give you growth forecasts like you see down on the bottom right there, and you can set up your own user-defined alerts. So if you want to know when the database or an individual table gets above a certain number of records or a certain size, it'll let you know. And it'll also highlight it on the screen. So again, this is a PowerForm dashboard for you within JD Edwards. Test it allows you to set your own criteria, select and copy data. So this is really for situations where you want to have a test environment that don't want to copy absolutely everything over and don't have some scripts to do it, or they're too cumbersome. So building blocks for things like payables, fixed assets, purchasing inventory, your criteria, whether you want to add, replace, clear, and update. If you want to do it for a specific company, document type or period, high-level defaults and lower-level overrides. So third one is the job performance analyzer, brand new. Lets you see the jobs that have been running, all are selected servers, information on how long it took to execute, time slices, you can sort that as well and winnow it down, users, versions, job queues. So if you want to see what's taking time, this is an awesome tool to be able to do that. And because it's a PowerForm in JD Edwards, you got your normal QBE line, etc. So at the end of this, you've done your data analysis. You're doing this to try and get some benefit for the business. Where's that going to come from? Storage costs. which are hard costs for the business if you're hosted or cloud. Again, service cost and transactional costs. Every in or out, every bit that you store is costing you money. Rough cut analysis is that's going to be several $1,000s a year per 100 gigabytes, let's say. Performance, reduce support calls, more efficiency. Look at your long-running jobs as a starting point. How could that help out? General rule of thumb, if you can save 10 minutes a day for people by making the system hum better, if you have 50 users, that's the equivalent of saving a full-time equivalent, 45 to 60,000 a year. Disaster recovery, business processes, pretty much every time we run through this, we see improvements that we can do based upon the analysis. If you have too much data, you're possibly in a legal exposure position. Your CFO's risk or appetite for that risk. Keeping clean just avoids issues, just like keeping your home and car maintained. Reduce size and make other environments like we mentioned. Get your data back to having integrity so you can actually run the integrity reports and work with them. And soft stuff like upgrading your JDE and hardware. So this is all about what the value you're going to get is. We like to be a no surprises one, so we thought we'd show you what the flip side to that is, which is an investment. So the software license we show here, that's the perpetual license. That's a CapEx. Your annual maintenance is a recurring. Software upgrades and support, that's your OpEx. The installation time showing there and covers full installation, typically in two environments, so typically production and PY. And before we finish it, we make sure that the system's running, so we run test jobs. The training covers all of the modules, so it could be less if you're not needing all of them. And part of the training, we launch one job, so we actually do the full setup at the end of the training. We come back to the next module, we look at it and start the triage process. So all of the projects I've done this year with new customers, that's all I've done. I've not done any consulting other than maybe a couple of additional hours. Prices here are in US dollars and enterprise licenses are available. So if you've got under 100 concurrent users, your all-in price, software, maintenance, installation, and training is under $27,000. And if you had 240 users, it's under $38,000. So in comparison to the costs, in comparison to what you're going to be getting, we figure that's a pretty fair trade-off. So I'm going to get on to the very last slide here. And Terry, we're right, probably a minute or so past with a delay for getting the last people on. But any other final questions out there?
Hi, Mike. Yeah, there was a couple of others, but I'll just, I mean, one of the questions just asked here is, let me just, it's about the makeup of a project itself. Do they see? Sorry, I'm just trying to read it here. Do you see the removal of data being an IT or business-led project? I guess that's really depends on where the target audience is coming from, whether they're from the business or from IT themselves. Did you want to take that, or should I ever?
Yeah, sure. Well, I'll take a crack at it, and then you can add your comments in if you want. The business owns the data, so the business should be making the decisions on things. I think the business would be absolutely dependent upon IT for helping them out with it. So the things like the SQL summaries, helping to understand the data and all that, categorically IT can help. We've seen for things like running the Purge-it routines, we've seen it fall on both sides of the fence. But again, the biggest thing from my perspective is the business owns the data, so the decisions have to be on their part, but with a very strong lead and assist from IT. Is that what you see in figure as well, Terry?
Yeah, definitely. Oddly enough, we've seen an approach from either side. In certain instances, it's been the business that have contacted us and been firmly in control of the project, and in other instances, it's been IT driven because IT are feeling the complaints. You know, they know that something needs doing.
And they're the ones with the shovel behind the elephant.
Yeah, they need a business buy-in on it because obviously business own the data, but IT effectively have to manage the kit. I suppose that one of the things that we have seen though is because specifically around the Purge-it product, because it's because it's built within JD Edwards, running it doesn't have to be technical. A lot of your slides mention table names and SQL and data analysis, and it makes it sound all very technical. But the truth is that a lot of the work around the implementation of the project has been done within the product already. So it doesn't mean that you need to understand what your tables and table names and their relationships are. You just need to be able to run a process on JD Edwards. So we see it from both. We see sometimes business drive the project, and sometimes it's IT driven with a business overseeing what happens to the data. So it's I don't think there's a right or wrong way. There's just depends on the organisation itself as to who's driving the need.
Yeah, fair enough. True points, Terry, for sure.
Okay. And possibly one other, but I'm a bit concerned about time, Mike.
Yeah, so maybe if there's other questions, we can reply directly to the people kind of offline, as they say. So thanks, Terry. So
thank you.
In terms of possible, excuse me, next steps, let us do the data analysis for you. You know, it's not going to cost you anything. It's not going to hurt. We're pretty nice guys most days. You might be surprised at what you see. You're not going to go ahead with any kind of a solution unless there's value for it. We understand that. We've been in business a long time. So let's see what we can do to help you out. If you just want to have a discussion talking about some specific scenarios that you've got, users are complaining about assets, or we think we got some slow jobs, or yeah, we sold off a line of business, or we got an acquisition we're about to do. Job about that, cool. We do have some other sessions coming up. First couple of weeks of December, EnterpriseOne data dinosaurs. So talked about master data and obsolete data. We will do a deeper dive using the tool set within Purge-it to how you would construct the processes around removing the data. We touched on Manage-it as well. Probably not till January at this point, but we will do an overview of that as well. So that's it. So contact information, myself at ISP3 and Terry at Click IT. Everybody, thank you for your time today. We hope this was helpful and informative, and it gave you some things to chew on. We very much believe that there is benefit in doing the data analysis and just seeing what you've got and figuring out what you could do to make your organization more effective and more efficient. So we hope we hear from you so that we can see how we can help you. Terry, thanks for your time, and we'll keep it open for another minute or two here to see if there's any other questions that come in. Other than that, everybody, thanks for your time today.
Thanks, Mike, and thanks for inviting me along.
Yeah, no worries.